Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hello, my friend.
What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, man. Great to see you.
You too. All's well?
All is well, man. Yeah, so excited to get you on the Ethics Experts and finally get an episode going.
Sounds great.
So let's just dive right in. I don't know. I've known you for a while. Anytime we get together, I always hit it off with you. You're just somebody who I think sees the world the right way. And I think you have some really interesting perspectives on a lot of the challenges that we're having in our industry right now, So
yeah.
I always like to start though, what were you like growing up? What kind of a kid were you? What kind of led you into this space?
So as a kid, I was a pretty gregarious, not surprising, good student, loved sports, always, hanging out with everybody. I'm the baby of 4 siblings. So that says probably more about me than anything else for any older siblings or middle children listening. I was raised to be a politician. And,
yeah, you're built for it.
I think the reason I always start there is that's how I ended up here. I was in the White House in the Clinton administration and realized I didn't want this because I didn't like policy. And now I mostly deal with policy.
Ironies of ironies, yeah.
Right. And so, it's like that's, but my first political campaign was for Congressman Skelton in the 3rd grade in Lexington, Missouri.
What was it about politics that kind of drew you to it, that you thought this might be a place for me?
Nick, we're going to get deep pretty quickly. The universe told me that, when you said I was built for it, that's probably what's triggering this memory for me is, look, I have the 17 dimensions of power. And so everyone just thought, well, Jim can lead. Jim, is a good guy. Jim cares. He's all these things, so why not? And then, I was raised in a family that was very active in politics. My granddad was senior Democrat of the state the last 10 years of his life. And I know I'm using political parties here in the U.S. and people are like, oh, turn this off. But it's like the Democratic and Republican parties have changed over the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
And so,
totally.
what that represents is not what many may think about today. And so I was just raised to always be aware of those around me, the importance of trying to help others and do good. And, it's why my auto signature is be and do good. Those things have stayed with me my entire life.
Yeah. So you get into the White House and it's not really what it was. I mean, there was probably a bunch of leapfrogs to kind of get there. Probably was a really big thing to get, right? To be in the White House. And you said, I didn't like policy. And what was it about that whole sort of realm that kind of made you rethink this sort of trajectory that you were on, for pretty much all your life?
Right. And looking back, right now, I can tell you from the first third grade politics of walking in a parade and handing out flyers to people, right, to where I am, I've always wanted to influence human behavior. It's just I finally understand now the most important human behavior is my own.
Right.
And how do I transform myself to transform those around me? And so I think that the transition really started in that, so here I was, and I thought politics was just getting people to vote. I didn't know it was these boring, horrific meetings and having to placate to donors. And, I was working in presidential personnel and so I want to be very clear. What I was doing is anytime a political appointment needed to be made, I was running through resumes and I would start with the president's list, then the vice president, then the first lady, and then the second first ladies. And it was just finding, who might fit a position. And it was not glamorous. It was tedious resume matching work. Right. So this, no one.
Yeah, you were banging gavels and signing your name. Yeah.
Save America. It was like, here's someone whose dad gave a lot of money. They may get a job today in Southern California because it's a political appointment. I mean, so let's be very clear what I was doing. At the same time, though, I got to spend the 4th of July on the South Lawn.
Wow.
I got to go to the President of Ireland's official dinner. There were just some cool things I got to do. So I don't want to also downplay it too much. It was a pivotal time for a young man, enough so that it convinced me not to go to law school. It convinced me to come home and not have a job with a college degree. And my parents were like, hey, we'll help you. And so then they're like, but you need to do something. So I ended up working at J.C. Penney in the men's department because I needed to buy a suit and I didn't have the money to do it, because I wasn't employed.
Right.
So I got a discount, got a suit. And in the first 6 months, I was employee of the month at that department store. Actually, I said first 6 months. It was in my first month. I had top sales, and in my first month, I was employee of the month at the department store.
So, I mean, there's a lot of transferability in your 17 dimensions of power that even works in a department store,
Right. I could sell a suit,
Right.
but it also comes back to, I've always been trying to influence human behavior, Nick, and do so for good. But it's taken me the time to realize whether it was politics or marketing and sales, or then I transitioned from the commercial side of a multinational organization from Johnson & Johnson into the ethics side of MedImmune AstraZeneca. And then while at AstraZeneca, I got into the ESG work and I started to realize we're in a time and space where human behavior impacts the longevity of our home and therefore us. And so when I find that thread all the way through, it does go back to my childhood when I was expected with my siblings to be and do good and not be the cause of harm. And that's what I'm trying to do today.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. You said trying to influence others to do good. You've been influenced, or you've been sort of fascinated by the prospect of influencing other people's behavior. And then you said something really poignant a couple minutes ago where you said, like, I have to like fix my own behavior before I can really, affect those around me, or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
That is absolutely true. And I've seen that, that's like one of those lessons that I seem to have to keep like learning over and over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to like fix your own head before, it's just so easy to start kind of looking around at like the ills in the world and, other people's behavior and telling them that they should sort of change those things instead of like looking inward and fixing things, in self, which is, to your point, the only thing that you can control. There's some kind of corollary there though, between, that conversation and like the ESG conversation. So what was it about? Like, it was a much bigger scope, right? You're like, okay, this is kind of the same thing. We're trying to, influence people to do good, to fix our home, as you said. What was it about the moving of the pieces on the board, so to speak, in that sort of ESG realm that you were like, okay, I really want to dig in here?
I started to realize, so I used to make fun of it, it's like, this is ridiculous. What is it? And then I dove in and again, what I do really well, I have embraced my one of my superpowers is I collect dots for others to collect them. And I hid that from the world for quite some time because the world wanted linear, right? We operate in systems of government, education, religion, and business, right? Those are just some of the big ones that just want you to get your job done. 90% of my time in my brain is in a creative place. So like, it is really hard for me to stick into a linear conversation. It's what I love about, this is not scripted. You didn't send me questions in advance. We are just riffing here, right? This is the most comfortable I've been in quite some time on a podcast because often those interviewing me want to go through their script.
Yeah, right.
I can't do that. It's really,
nothing grows like that, dude.
No, it doesn't. Right? No, it doesn't. And so, as we're sitting here and I'm thinking about all of this, the way I was able to get into ESG is I started collecting the dots. This isn't a different world, right? Just like, I was just talking to a dear friend who was, a chief compliance officer. And I'm like, my mantra when I've ran compliance functions is I'm not here to build a department. I'm here to build compliant operations for the business.
Right.
This stuff sits with you.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what my department does.
100%.
It matters what you do. And so,
100%.
and so then I started seeing this whole sustainability ESG work and everyone's doing that. I'm like, wait, we're recreating the same systematic problem we did with compliance.
Yeah, right.
And so I merged the two because I started realizing this is about.
It's the same thing.
It's risk.
Right.
And then, again, I just always have to talk about this because it's why I ended up writing my book, Risk in Action. And this isn't a sell pitch, but I just always have to describe this. I was trained by all these systems.
Yep.
And we're going to get into this in just a second. There's two things why we always try to fix others, right? Because it's easier than trying to address the monsters inside of here.
Right.
And so, and so there's two things I want to talk about now, right? The first is the systems have taught us that we need to be fearful of failure and fearful of inadequacy. I'm not enough, so who am I to question? And why would I do something? Because I may fail, then the system will reprimand me. So healthy adults, which is about 98% of people, the others have personality disorders. Many of us are familiar with like narcissism, so the remaining 2% are not for this conversation, but the other 98%, if you're relatively healthy,
right.
Those are
not a raging narcissist.
Yeah.
Listen up. Okay.
Yeah. Those are the two fears that we face every single day, Nick.
So it's fear of inadequacy and fear of failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And boy, they're correlated.
Totally.
Right? Because if I'm going to try something, who am I to try it?
Yeah.
And so the two books I've written, Trust in Action is Fear and Inadequacy, Risk in Action is Fear of Failure. And so what I started to figure out is that those are the lenses through which we look at risk, but I want to redefine risk to help human behavior, because I was taught by the systems that risk is negative.
Right.
Risk is simply the gap between where I am and where I know I need to go.
I mean, saying risk is negative is like saying like a color is negative.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And the systems have.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. I mean, at
this
some
is just
level,
how my brain works. I know I want to stay focused here, but yeah.
No.
Right.
I mean, you're exactly right. So you define it as like where the gap between where I'm at and where I want to go. That's what risk is.
The one thing I want to change here, because this is about internal, I'm very adamant. It's not where I want to go. It's where I know I need to go. Because the system, out of fear of failure and fear of inadequacy, believes or wants us to try to go somewhere else. It's why we stay in our jobs that aren't meant for us. It's why we stay in relationships that aren't healthy for us, because the system says, I should not find my own voice. I should not, don't be rogue, just be part of the system.
Right.
And I'm not looking for chaos. That's not what I'm talking about. But we all are part of the humanity system where we have the guidance of good within us.
Yeah, right.
And so
in your gut,
That's it, my man. And it's that simple for me. And I'm just trying to awaken, some other thought leaders and I work a lot in this space around fear. And we talk about the true me, right? And I use the word true because that's what the world thinks is true. It's the masks we all wear so the systems don't punish us for failure and inadequacy. But then I'm now trying to get to my authentic me. The one where the inner voice is like, Jim, that's not who you are. That's not how you need to show up. In that committee meeting, asking for the next, let's do another round of research is just delay. It's fear coming. Push them. And when I don't speak up, my true me is doing it over my authentic me, because my authentic me knows it's time to go.
But that conflict is such a, like, so much of us live in that conflict for a time. And sometimes you get to a point where like that authentic me is like kind of silenced, and you're just living in this sort of, this true me self, to use your terms.
Yeah.
And like that light gets so dimmed. And that's how I think people, that's how people kind of like something breaks at some point. You know what I mean?
Well, it's why we're anxious and depressed. It's why there's chaos in the world. We're trying to protect systems that aren't helping any of us.
Yeah. And, this thing about a system is it's like inherently fragile. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not most, let's just say, I'll say most like unnatural or inorganic systems are not like flexible. They don't, I read this book many years ago called Anti-Fragile. And like the concept of it is so interesting because like many like organic systems, natural systems are extremely anti-fragile. Like if you walk barefoot on, pavement, your feet get stronger, right? Yeah. Like if you break a bone, it grows back stronger, right? Like as you apply stress to those kinds of systems, they strengthen. Like that's how you build muscle and stuff like that. But if you apply stress to sort of a man-made, sort of rigid, sort of crystalline system, they always break. And so it's almost like a necessary like counterbalance for that system to like not grow. Like it can't flex, right? Like that's why there's all that kind of rigidity in these systems that we're talking about.
Well, and Nick, we've gone really abstract, and I'll just come back. When I first joined AstraZeneca North America compliance team, it was so fragile.
Mm-hmm.
But, 2 consecutive CIAs for a decade, back-to-back CIAs, and the teams and the business leaders. My first meeting, I'll never forget this. There were about 50 people because everyone had to have a voice, and they were arguing over a word in a policy. And this, it would have been involving commercial sales reps or something. It took me 9 months, but I took away more than 1,000 pages of policies and standards.
Wow.
And a 30-page code of conduct down to 1 page, 5 values, 10 behaviors. We were creating the fragility that if something happened, we had to find a new word because that word they didn't understand. No one ever looked at the word.
Right.
It's
crazy.
We were building a compliance function instead of building compliant operations. And so that fragility was existing. And every time something went wrong, it came back to the team, and the team was being criticized, failure, inadequacy, the 2 fears. And so they were trying to fight that authentic me, true me, instead of just saying, whoa, this is your problem. We had 17 meal limits, Nick. And my
17 what?
Meal limits.
Wow.
So, and there's some regulation, it's by state and all that, but it was on-site, off-site, doctors, nurses, non-HCPs, all these things. I'm like, guys, the business first off, the business didn't have money. So I stripped it down to $150. If any meals ever over 150, we're going to investigate. If not, you managers need to figure this out. It's your budget.
Right.
We're not going to write into policy what these things are. And if someone goes over the meal limit, I'm not going to investigate them. I'm going to investigate the manager who approved it.
There you go. You're pushing that sort of the control mechanism down instead of trying to aggregate thousands of these dots,
I built compliance operations within the business to do their job instead of building a function. And a third of my investigators' time was freed up of capacity. So then they could start doing other work we needed to do to drive more innovation.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Like there's this, I've been in this industry for a decade, and from like day one until now, I hear the same complaints, I need more heads, I need more, I need more budget and all that kind of stuff. And what's I'm fascinated by this thing in business called the theory of constraints. Have you heard of this? So there is
makes sense, but no.
Yeah. So in any sort of complex system or multi-step system, there's usually some kind of a bottleneck. Yeah. And the throughput of that system is always governed by and limited by that bottleneck. Yeah. And if you are never, if you want, so think you can think about it in a manufacturing operation. The machine maybe can rip out 1,000 units per hour, but if the packaging piece of that, that step can only do 50 an hour, well then you're only ripping out 50 an hour. Yeah. And it's interesting that when you look at something, zoom out and you look at kind of these steps and you can find these kinds of bottlenecks. The solution is usually not, well, I just need 10 more packaging machines. The solution is, well, if I can just package these, if I can run this packaging machine or this packaging step a little bit faster, then I can take advantage of this, this sort of like latent potential in the, in the manufacturing unit. So what you just kind of described is you made some changes to the system itself. You pushed out the compliance controls, so to speak, to the business, which then freed up the time for your team to do some of that, important non-urgent work that was actually going to drive the innovation. Like adding more to a system is very rarely, generates a commensurate sort of output. It's usually like a reconfiguration of that system that allows for the freeing up of the resources in the system. But it's like, we're still stuck in that, and maybe it's kind of going back to what you're saying. It's like this system's thinking that's sort of like infiltrated our true selves or whatever, causes us to kind of look at all these things with blinders and say like, okay, well, the only way I can solve this, given the
constraints or something.
The constraints is like more heads. And it's like, well, sometimes it seems to not really be an option because, 10 years later, I'm still hearing the same chorus. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I call that the oscillation of land of now, because people are looking at the gap that risk creates fearfully. So they're standing in land of now instead of traversing the bridge of trust to get to land of next.
Right.
And Nick, I'm just going to tell you, like, this is how my brain's working. When you were giving me that example, the first question I have is, do you even have to package what you just finished, or can you just ship it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
like, when you just stop and again, I don't know where you are on things. Fuck is one of the words I could say because it had no Latin root. I'm the child of an English teacher, so it was made up. Basically, is how my mom did it.
It's a fake word. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't use a fake word or the Lord's name in vain. So those are the two things. Or any derogatory term to a human that could be viewed only for one.
Right.
Like I could call everyone an ass, but I could never use the B word because that was
Right.
only meant for one. So everyone could
Right.
be an A word, but not a B word. So anyway, I'm coming through all of this because this is what I call the fuckery.
Yeah.
And it's given to us by others, but we're the ones who build it. And that's why I'm now no longer worried about changing human behavior at scale. I want one person to stop the fuckery.
Yeah.
You have built this, you can unbuild it.
Yeah. You can,
and as we start to do that.
Those Lego pieces you can take apart and you can rebuild them in a different way. Like they're not glued together, to your point.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. They're beautifully built. We did it because we felt, someone told us, what I always say is the other line through my life is love. And, fear was given to me out of love, a leader.
It's a protectionist thing. Yeah.
My parents gave it to me. Fear is often given to us by those closest to us. It starts with our parents generationally from their parents.
Yeah.
It's often reinforced through our partners and spouses and then our children, because we're passing it on. Then in the workplace, it's given by those who, I was talking about this the other day. My team was one of the first 3 globally to have a net zero program, fully funded and all of this, right? That year, I did not get a 5 on my performance review. We actually changed the global standard for how the world looks at operations, and I was not a 5.
Isn't it? I mean, that to me is crazy. That resonates with me in my first job. In my first or second year, I brought a deal in, which is usually like what partners are supposed to do.
Yes, right.
And I was like, I should get freaking promoted for this. Like, I should get a sick bonus, and I should get promoted. And like,
Let
I
it
didn't.
rain.
And I was like, what is this? Like, and it's kind of what you're talking about. It's this sort of huge corporate system that like did not really reward or value the entrepreneurship or the innovation or the, which is bizarre because, I mean, look, I'm talking about myself, so my favorite subject, but like, what's more valuable to the organization than that? Like, wouldn't you want a whole team of like young people, associates, whatever, like bringing in more business to the business? Like, isn't that what you would expect? Yeah. And that to me was like such a wake up call where I was just like, this for my personality, this huge sort of corporate thing. I just have like a different sort of core foundational value set, I think.
Yeah. And the amazing thing for me, the year that happened, I was resentful.
Oh, totally.
And now looking back, the EVP of HR, my boss, the EVP of compliance, they were part of that system. They couldn't because they were being told by the CEO, well, I didn't bring the cure to cancer. We were in life sciences. And that's what gets a 5. So we all were such top performers. And so since no one,
so there's like one tiny group that could even potentially get a 5. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, no, it is. Right. And so it keeps coming back to when they gave that to me, no one hated me.
Yeah. Right.
And so I had to change how I reacted to the system without hate. And that's the amazing thing is, and it's why when I talk about love and people start to get uncomfortable, I used to be uncomfortable with it. But the only way self-transformation starts to happen is when I love myself enough to say my authentic self shows up versus my true self.
That's that's a kind of a helpful frame to kind of think about these two selves because it almost like detaches you from it. I think there's a lot of self-reflection that people avoid because it's just one person to them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I can't, it's like, there's too much like ego death potential or something. You're like, there's too much like self-attack to like do it. But if you can look at it from these two different perspectives, I mean, and it makes sense. Like I even see it in my young children, there's a certain point where they're fully innocent and they're not like self-critical and they're not worried what other people think about them. And then they hit some kind of tipping point where now they're really worried about these things. And you see them sort of starting to shave edges off of themselves and, like when there's a baby doesn't have a true self. They just have that the authentic self. Right. And then now we're adults and we have these two selves and we're walking around with this like armor, or this carapace, these like facades that we've developed, like layers of lacquer over the years. And it's hard to even know who that authentic self is in some cases.
It is. And yet what I will say is the voice is always there.
Right.
I've gone through some recent trauma. And when I stop, that authentic self is awake.
Right.
Another thing I want to say too is I talk about the two most common fears, but Amon Wolf, AMONWOLFE, out of Australia, has mapped the 9 most common fears to the 9 stages of human development.
Interesting.
And so when you were bringing up your kids, often whenever we start school, right, around age 5 or 6, we start to learn to conform.
Right.
And so that's where some fears of alienation, fear of, I can't think of all of them right now, but
like rejection.
Now, yes, exactly. And now that I'm in my 50s, fear of relevance.
Right.
Fear of, I can't remember all, the other 7 now, but, like you're exactly right. The innocence, but when you go to school, especially for someone with my brain, I had to be linear. I had to learn this.
Yeah, totally.
Way. But yet, I hate math. But in 5th grade, I had a teacher that saw I learned differently. And by the end of my 5th grade year, I had finished calculus because she was allowing me to go at my own speed and go with geometry and algebra and would get the books from the high school. And There was another kid named Toby. And so Toby and I were peer learners. And we were going through all these things. And I got A's on the high school tests for all the math options that were available.
Wow.
And I hate math.
Right.
It's not my specialty. But when that teacher, her name was Betty Haney, and we had major conflict because she was also my Sunday school teacher. I was with her 6 days a week. But she allowed me to learn the way I learned. And when that happened, I was unleashed.
Right.
And that's when the educational system was still there for me, but the fragility of it was removed. And I got to learn. I still can't believe, so I want to correct something. I don't think I took the calculus test, but I know that I took algebra 1 and 2. I had the geometry done and math 4. And then so I think in the last quarter of my 5th grade, I just started calculus. And I want to be very clear. I'm not a prodigy. I'm not. But when I'm allowed to learn at my speed, I can learn things differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm just thinking about like how many freaking thousands and millions of other people like you didn't get that kind of Betty Haney to allow them to like bloom a little bit. And what kind of stories did they end up telling themselves that ended up kind of defining their own identity, like their self, like how they viewed themselves, the path that they ended up taking. Like, I mean, it's really a crazy thing,
I'm going to share, since you brought up your kid, I'm proud of my boys, they're great people. They've had me and their other parent raising them, and we both have told them the world is yours, like these guys are quirky. They're best-selling authors at age 8 and 10. They've traveled all 7 continents, all 50 states. They understand the complexities of the worlds around them. My youngest wants to play sport at university, and I know you have a global audience, and so in the United States, the athletics are divided, by D1 to D2 to D3. He had convinced himself. He's a really good athlete, but he's like, I need it, but he's also really strong academically. So I'll probably be a D3 athlete. I'm not a D1. His first offer this past weekend was from a D1 school.
Get out of here.
And from an Ivy.
Wow.
And so my whole thing to him is I said, this is the perfect example of fear and inadequacy and fear of failure. And the universe is shouting at you, stop. Did you hear it?
What a lesson.
Right? But I want to share that with everyone because this is the perfect example because he went and performed and this coach said, I would hate to try to steal a base against you. You protect the plate. And he's like, that's the type of defense I want.
Wow.
And so
Again,
it's just,
like how great though when you have a limiting belief and you're shown with like clear evidence
yes,
I mean, we all build these sort of like prison walls. Like we
we
build
do.
these walls in our mind of like what we can and can't do. And I saw this I don't know, this TikTok or something of, in Japan, they grow these like cube watermelons. And,
Mhm.
they like when the watermelon is really small, they put this sort of like, plastic like enclosure or this like
Oh,
encasement around it. And then it grows to those, edges. And it's like
yeah.
that thing would grow beyond that like cube. That would grow beyond that encasement. But when it winds up in the store, they can stack them up like blocks because they've all
Yep.
sort of grown to this sort of conformed,
Mm,
it looks like a cube. And it's like we do that to ourselves. We like put
we
these
do.
encasements around ourselves because a teacher told us something or a parent told us something or a boss told us something that like we end up like digesting and we like pull those walls
Mhm.
in. You know what I'm saying?
So Nick, I'm laughing because holy crap! Like we both just jumped on this call, no
Yeah.
plan.
Right.
But you just gave me a freaking watermelon in cube, and I have to tell you, the model I use for Fearful an executive leader, I never did an org chart with boxes because I'm an artist. And I had a remarkable art teacher early on teach me, you think you're drawing a face. You're actually drawing a square, a circle, and a triangle.
Right. They're just a bunch of shapes.
Right. And so I started learning to break things down into shapes.
Mm-hmm.
But everything boils down to those three shapes. They boil down to three colors: red, yellow, blue. Right. It's like everything boils down to these basics. And so I refused to box people in an org chart. So I always did ovals or circles, right? And my entire brand currently for Jim Massey and Eastward circles, you won't see a square anywhere. But in my model, I have models for trust, risk, and fear. And my model for fear is a box that's three-sided because fear boxes us in. And the only way to overcome that is to be fully immersed in it, to learn it never existed. It's here.
Right. It's here.
And so that's why the top of my box is only three-sided, because once you fully experience it, you can get to the top and then see everything that's possible. When you get to the other side of fear, that's the land of next I talk about with risk.
But you got to be immersed in it.
You have to fully experience the fear to realize it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's like a baptism or something.
It is 100%.
I love that. The three sides. That's cool.
Yeah, but it's a box because it's exactly what happens. And you have to grow to that point to see what's possible.
Yeah, to see up over the edge or something.
Yeah. Because otherwise you will just stay in land of now oscillating.
Man, I mean, so many people, I mean, I do it. I mean, there's certain aspects of my life that are just like definitely like, I got a PO box in the land of now. You know what I'm saying? I got a mailbox here. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
You don't have to stay there. You can move beyond it. You always can,
Yeah. And then the other thing I always love to tell people, and this happens, right? The first time someone loses weight or, they start at the gym, it's like, this is my new life. And then 90 days later, they may come back, But, I always tell leaders, just because you get to land of next doesn't mean you get to stay there. The responsibility is now to come back and help others traverse the gap.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
really good. And,
and
and also the land of next can also turn into the land of now if you stay there too long,
Bingo. Yep. Especially at I talk a lot about Martek's law. The rate of change is so rapid that we will never get to stand again.
What does that mean?
Exactly like you just said. If you stay at land of next too long, that becomes land of now.
Yeah.
There is no,
There's no destination is kind of the point.
Correct. My partners and I just built a product and we're selling it. And every time I sell it to a client, I tell them, by the way, the product you're buying today is not the product you're going to continue to get. I refuse to accept this is all I can do for you.
Right.
Your prices aren't going to change. Maybe next year at annual subscription they might, but I have 100 agents working for each one of my clients that are continuously trying to reprogram and rebuild with human oversight. Because I do not believe AI can be autonomous at this point. And I think the magic of human and artificial intelligence is what gives us the critical judgment wisdom humans need.
Yeah. Or allows us to like exhibit that as a larger proportion of our time spent.
That's it. Yep. On all those. And so, that's exactly it. And so, I'm not selling a product that's done.
Right.
And people are always like, no one's ever told us that. I'm like, well, I'm just transparent and honest. I believe I can continue to deliver more.
Right. Why is that so scary? I think it's scary to kind of cross that chasm for a lot of people. And there's a certain sort of comfort in land of now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And you can look around, you can see a lot of other people that are in the land of now kind of getting fat and happy or whatever. It's hard to constantly like push that forward. And it's also kind of hard to continually look inward and see like, how can I change myself? I don't know. I'm kind of like, I've been maybe battling with this a little bit, and again, I feel like this is a battle that I've waged like multiple times in my life, but like truly all you can sort of control is like yourself. I kind of view this gap of stress. Like we have this sort of perceived sphere of what we can influence. And then, that's kind of surrounding our body. And then there's a perceived or like what I think I can influence versus what I can actually influence. Obviously the weather is outside of that. Right. But like, there's a bunch of other, like my kids, or there's other things that are kind of perhaps inside that sort of gap between what I can actually influence and what I think I can influence. And it's like, there's a lot of anxiety and fear and like, negativity that like comes from that, I think kind of lives in that gap. And it's like, in actuality, like the real sphere is like maybe just on my own skin. Like, like all, maybe it's just in my brain or something. And it's like so much of our lives is spent living in that gap. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we keep that compressed into a more sort of accurate, you know what I'm saying? Like a more accurate gap so that we don't just go nuts or just kind of fall into apathy.
And by the way, the 98% of people I'm trying to address are in exactly where you're saying. And so, Nick, there's a big difference between trying to influence and try to control.
Yeah. It's a thin line, and it's like a blurred line for me sometimes.
It is. Yeah. But, what I keep coming back to is I transform myself every single day to transform those around me, to transform the world. And I start my transformation. It's tough, but I'm more than the world needs from me, and I am safe. And if I start with there,
I'm more than the world needs from me. There's a safety in that.
There is.
There's a comfort in that, I guess,
There's also an adequacy acceptance.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm addressing the fear that I'm not enough. And I know I'm not. I mean, come on, Nick, like I'm not enough to figure out Tahoma's not the right font for PowerPoint. I mean, come on.
Yeah. What are we talking about?
Right. But that's what we do. And then the second is I am safe. A fear of failure is that something, if I don't get this right, I could be fired. And so then, I'll lose my home. I'll lose all, that's a safety issue. So I start every day with those simple affirmations as almost like a touch point, I am more than the world needs from me today, and I am safe. And so then what am I capable of doing is what do I have to get done today? Because anxiety is simply worrying about and fearing something in the future.
Right.
And so it's about presence. And when I first did my fear workshop, what it was about self-chaos, the push between the true self and authentic self. But then we shifted from what is it that I fear to why do I fear it? And my fear was because I then had to be present for my authentic self.
Right.
And so now all I try to do every day, Nick, is be present for myself. And it sounds selfish, but when I am present for myself, then I can be what I need to be for my kids, my colleagues, my clients. And I can sit here and listen to the magic of your brilliance bringing to me. I've never heard about the square watermelon, but then quickly connect because I'm present for myself and therefore I'm present for you, connect to the fear so the listeners now can start to realize we box ourselves in on a daily basis, but there's no top.
There's no top. I love that.
We're the ones who build that for us.
Yeah. Or you're just kind of like looking around in a way.
That's it. Yeah.
And you're just
we
like,
know the ceiling, we know the
there's
walls.
a way out. You know
Yes, there is. Yeah, that's it.
There's no top on the jail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you said about presence, though, it's like such a battle because there's so much noise. There's notifications, there's phone going off, there's emails, there's ruminating about the future, lamenting about the past, and all of those kinds of things. But like, to your point, that presence, when all that other noise, which you can't control, kind of to your point, is like quieted, then you feel so different. I mean, I think that's why, I don't know, if you're going for a run or you're like exercising or you're like playing a game or something where it like demands your sort of full attention, and which is essentially your presence.
It is.
That's why it feels so like decompressing or something.
You summed it up.
Yeah.
And so everyone just needs to try to quiet. I call it the white noise. I'm old enough to remember when the antenna wasn't working in the rural home we lived in.
Yeah.
You just get the white noise of a TV. And in every keynote, I always talk about, listen, this sounds simple, but I acknowledge the white noise. And let's list that. What's the white noise? Geopolitical, Strait of Hormuz, Ukraine, World Cup, positive white noise too. World Cup's going on. There's all this stuff going on, of which I cannot control the outcome.
Right.
So let it be. But what can I do today? The most pressing thing today was being here with you. I have a few client meetings this afternoon. I have some things I need to. So I'm not saying don't worry and plan for the future.
But be here now,
Yeah. And I have a thought leader summit I'm holding on Tuesday on risk. Okay, I got everything planned. I have my questions. People are going to show up or they aren't. I'm going to be present and I'm going to have a dialogue, hopefully with someone other than me. But if not, I'm pretty engaging, and so I will address the lack of in that moment, but not ahead of time.
Something you just said there, people might show up or they won't. That's like one of my biggest fears in life, is like throwing a party and nobody showing up for it.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, why is that? I think it's like proof of inadequacy or something in my mind.
And failure. They're highly correlated, right? Your party is a failure if others don't show up. And again, listening to that, it's why every party I host, I make sure I have the beverage of choice for me and at least one food item I like, because even if I'm alone, I'll be.
Then I'll have a nice evening by myself.
Yeah, right.
That's a great reframe. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, but again, what I love is you, Nick. I adore you because of your transparency and authenticity, right? But what you just shared is what I call the fuckery that we build internally. And so just that quick reconstruct of the Legos is, worst case, I get a night to myself. When's the last time you got that?
I don't even know.
The biggest gift would be if these people stayed away.
Matter of fact, don't come. But I mean, so much of our lives, I just feel like if the whole game is really just like a battle in the mind, then it all comes down to like, how can I reframe things for myself? That's really what, that's what you're kind of, those touch points or those, that mantra or those reminders you make for yourself every morning. Like, that's what you're doing. You're reframing your day. You're reframing, the noise a little bit, And
I'll tell you, my kids play Fortnite. And I don't know if the listeners are used to this, but they're killing other people, so that has always been a struggle for me.
But they have fun skins.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the thing of it is they're able to construct things from their backpacks in seconds. So I want to also be very clear. It's going to be a lifelong battle for me, and it's why it's a daily exercise, and it's sometimes an hourly exercise to deconstruct my Legos, because the speed with which I can build them back up and be triggered by something is phenomenal. But I do know there was something recently that just happened where, it was a family dynamic, and, I started getting sucked in, and then I woke up at 3 a.m. It's like, time out. That's not your construct anymore.
Right.
And the pivot, once I had that, I relaxed in my sleep. I got the best sleep. I have a wearable that tracks my sleep. The night sleep, I went back into REM. And I woke
Wow.
up so regenerated. And then that next day I took action, and that which I was anxious about, because the old dynamic I was used to started to come in and box me in.
Right.
And I peeked out over and I found a new path to land of now, or land of next.
Right.
And so I just want to be very clear. The construct was like boom, 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 boom. I almost got sucked in, and it started to
Right.
affect my sleep. And then
Totally.
luckily, and then the other thing I'll say is my trust model. I talk about love, and it's why I do this for myself, because I've come to understand that I am more than enough. I'm more than the world needs. And that comes, my trust model is the can, care, do. And the only way you're able to do what you say you're going to do is if you understand you're capable, and you understand and care enough.
Mm.
And for me, the care is the safety piece. I am safe, and the I'm more than the world needs is my capability. So now when I accept that, I'm able to do what I think and say I want to do. And
So
that's
the
the
can, care, do,
transformation.
what does that add up to? Or like, tell me a little more about that.
That's trust. So fundamentally, most people say trust is simply people do what they say they're going to do. And the hard part is that's only a third of the equation. The other two elements are they capable of doing what they're going to do? And do they care either about themselves, if it's a self topic, or those around them? Do they have others' best interests at heart when they're doing this? And so I'll give an example, right? Let's look at Elon Musk. People love or hate him, right? And, he will do what he says he will do. Is he capable? I think many people question, it depends on what you're talking about. The big area where trust for me falls with him is, does he care about others? Does he have my best interest at heart when he is in the US government with Doge, when he is building his technology, when he is building all these things? I don't think he does.
Okay.
So I don't trust Elon Musk in what he's doing. Others may trust him, but
Right.
that's, he always does what he says he will do. But I do not believe he has everyone's best interest at heart. And I don't think he's the most capable to be determining what the federal government needs, or in the US and things. And so because of that, I didn't trust that process.
So do you think, so let me see if I got this right. Trust is really a function of this can, care, do model.
Yes.
Is the do a function of can and care? Like, is can plus care, does that equal do? And then do, whether do happens or not, kind of influences the trust? Or am I getting that a little bit wrong?
No, you're exactly right. But on human behavior, do can happen without can and care.
It can. Okay.
Yeah, because Elon Musk went in and cut the federal government the way he wanted. So he took the action, right? And me, who I am, my trust of Elon Musk's process for Doge doesn't matter,
Yeah, right.
It's an example many people are aware of, and so I can kind of break those up.
Yeah. It's a good sort of outside example that we all know of.
Yeah. And so, I apologize. I thought I had this on
No, you're good.
Do Not Disturb. And so I'm back in present.
Yeah, we're back.
And so that's the irony, right? But people always say, "Oh, I trust someone because they do what they say they're going to do." And then I often say, "Do you believe they have your best interest at heart?" Well, why does that matter? Because that aligns to the intentions of their actions.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, because then, without answering that question, it can really only be sort of a one-dimensional trust. It's not like true trust, to your point, kind of.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm a 5 and dime human practitioner. So when I talk about, what I'm great at on collecting dots so others can connect them, is my model is built on years of others' research.
Yeah.
But they often have 7 steps of trust. They have all these other things. And so I have mapped, there's a 3-step, there's a triangle of trust out of Harvard, there's a 7-step and a 9-step of trust. But they basically boil down to, and I love, alliteration, can, care, do, CCD, it's just easy for me. So when I talk about this, it's been studied time and time again. It's not just, will someone do what they say they will? Are they capable? We all have had leaders who've come in and they'll cut a team, but they have no idea what the team did.
Yeah, right.
And they didn't care about the outcome. So the can and care did not there. So no one will trust that process.
So I want to I feel like this should have been a 2-hour episode. I gotta have you back. We gotta do something
We'll
else
come
together
back.
because I
Yes.
feel like I'm gonna leave this like I'm gonna have the best day ever. There are several people that I've had conversations with over the last, call it 2 or 3 months, in our space who have gotten kind of blindsided by losing their job. And it's been interesting to see the sort of spectrum of people, like how they've sort of responded to that. Some are like, I'm super excited that, good riddance, a new door will open, like a very sort of like opportunistic, sort of positive approach. Others who have been like, the world is falling, the sky is falling, and, just like the unknown of like what that next step is. And others that have been kind of in the middle that, maybe they're sort of their true self is showing optimism, but you can see a little in the authentic self, a little bit of, maybe there's not sort of a total like overlap there. What would you tell somebody who's going through something like that, where they've been blindsided or they feel like super stuck in something, but they also feel kind of paralyzed because they have a mortgage or whatever, they have kids going to college, all those kinds of things? Like, how can we kind of take this down to like the ground level, and give somebody a word of encouragement or a kind of a path forward?
You are more than the world needs from you, and you are safe.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And give me a call. Let's talk, right? You're not alone. And anyone, I have a keynote with a group of global thought leaders next week. And I'm going to say, if any of you in this room tell me that you do not have the fear of inadequacy or the fear of failure, it's okay. I know you're lying to me, and you're probably lying to yourself.
Right.
Nick, everyone has it right now. And if 100%. They don't, it's the 2% that we can't help. And I don't want to be around.
Right.
And so it is, we are at a rate of change that is beyond individual human capacity understanding.
You're right. It's really true.
And so if we accept that, what a privilege to be having a child go off to college. How are you going to pay for it? May have to do a loan. May not be the traditional path, but I had a college loan. I mean, right. I need to be more transparent. I was on full ride academic and I had other scholarships, but I did not pay. Like I got different ways. So I'm trying to say there are ways to pay for an education that doesn't have to be mom and dad paying for it.
Right.
May not be the path you thought, but now moved.
But it rarely is.
Yeah.
Life is rarely the path I thought.
Right. I mean, I was supposed to be the governor of Missouri today, and thank goodness I am not.
Right.
Right. And so I would tell anyone, you are more than enough and you are safe. And then from there, try to navigate and start coming back to quit giving me your true self, go to your authentic self. None of us wanted to be compliance officers when we were little kids. So
right.
What did you want to do before the world told you not to do it?
Yeah, man, dude, we could go a whole nother hour, but it's like, we just like adopt these identities, and it's just like, I'm a coach, and it's like, okay, well, when you're not coaching anymore, then what are you? It's like, well, you're just this guy, or you know what I'm saying? Like, these are just these are just collections of letters that form our titles, and they're just sort of these sort of system-based constructs that we then like adopt as like our identity. And I mean, I'm guilty of it,
So Nick, I introduced a small piece of me when I said I'm an artist, right? I have a new space that I'm wanting to decorate, right? And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I remembered my senior year of high school, I had an art portfolio that won a national competition that got me a full ride scholarship to an art institute. But out of love, I was told, do you want to be judged on that, or shouldn't you go into business? And so I took the business route, right? And so when I was moving this and I opened it up, I'm like, this is neat. I had drawn a pencil.
It'd been in a folder for years or whatever. Yeah.
But, I had a national award-winning picture of the place where my dad got his haircut in my small rural town. I had a batik as, similar to your shirt, tie-dye. Batik is doing art, but using wax and dipping and dye. And it was a portrait. So I took it into a frame shop, and there were some young artists, who were working there. And one was like, I have never seen a portrait in batik. She's like, this is technically challenging.
Yeah.
She's like, who did this? I'm like, me. She's like, well, who did this? I'm like, no, this is from my portfolio. I had 7 pieces framed and they're all on a gallery wall in my home now.
Cool.
But like, Nick, I'm using this as an example of, I have art students at premier programs asking me and telling me how technically difficult it is, but I parked that part of me.
Totally, man.
Because I was told, do you want to be judged this way? And so that's where it's just like all of us are a kaleidoscope of talents, but we've been, any like a chief sustainability officer without a job, what am I to do? Whatever in the fuck I want to do.
Right.
If I am safe. I'm more than the world needs from me, and I can tap other talents.
Right.
But the problem is the system has told us to be fearful of that, because who are you to change? And what if you fail? What if you succeed? There's for every fear there's kind of a counter fear, and it's fear of success.
Right. Then what? This is easy.
So I do not have it figured out, but I am trying really hard. And I think, I wish I had been thinking about this at 24, 25 instead of 52. But the magic is I'm 52 in a time when life expectancy is increasing.
Totally.
So I get to keep evolving to my land of next for quite some time.
Yeah, my gosh. I hate to wrap this up, dude, but we'll have to do something again, because
we will.
That thing of we quiet these things. Like, there's genius in all of us, and I was an artist also, and I haven't picked up a pencil. I mean, I doodle in meetings when I'm not present.
Right.
Okay, but you take this path because it seems safer, and you just said, like, I haven't figured it out, and it's like nobody kind of figures it out. Everybody, it's just a perpetual mountain that you're climbing of continually figuring it out, because the elevation changes and the slope changes and the weather change. It's like, it's all always changing. And to your point, it's changing faster than ever. So,
so keep
embracing that wave allows you to surf the wave versus getting caught up in like what's below the surface. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
and so for anyone listening, I want everyone to understand the risk you're feeling has no positive or negative connotation. It's only what your internal structure assigns to it. And if you free it to simply the gap, look at it through both trust and risk and see where you go. But my only request is that you go.
Yeah, move. You got to move a little. Yeah. Man, I love you, dude. This was so great.
I love you.
Thank you so much.
And I have no problem saying that, because it is. It's the only thing that's keeping us connected. So, Nick,
exactly.
I so appreciate you including me. It's a brilliant conversation. I cannot believe where we went with no script.
I know. Look at us. Just riding that wave, baby. All right. I'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you so much.
Be well. Yeah.
See you next time. Bye-bye.